Gee, that's a pretty nice little recorder. We've got a bigger recorder. That's from 20 years ago. And
yeah, boy, the technology is amazing. And one of the things that I like about this, too, is it records a digital file. So I can copy it to the computer and then save it on there.
Great.
Yeah, and then I can listen. It's a lot easier to listen to those players on the computer than it is on this. So.
Oh, sure. And then even these older things with the tapes, I've got boxes of tapes with the idea at the time I took them of old people around here, and 20, 30, 40 years ago. Well, I thought when I get older I'll listen to them, but I'm not that old yet because I haven't got time hardly to take a bath, you know. So it's amazing how life keeps going on, and you don't look back that much except it's interesting.
Right. Yep. Well, why don't we just start by looking back a little bit and tell me what your occupation was up here. Let's just start.
Well, yeah, I'll even start farther back than that just to give you how I happened to arrive at it. I was born and raised in northeast Minneapolis with my brother, younger brother, and two younger sisters. My dad was an engineer for Northern States Power Company. He'd grown up in Duluth. He'd married, he was in the Navy in the First World War, and when he got out, he went to the university and became an engineer for Northern States Power Company. My mother was born in northwestern Iowa, a little town called Rock Rapids. She's out on a farm there, just east of Sioux Falls, South Dakota there.
Okay.
Nice, rich farm country. And she had moved with her dad to Minneapolis. They had an apartment there, and somehow they met and they were married. And we lived in northeast Minneapolis. Well, went to schools there. But my dad thought northeast was always having a little trouble with kids behaving themselves just because they're kids, you know. And I remember throwing, the streets were paved with broken chunks of limestone about the size of golf balls, and they were perfect for throwing at street lights, since kids would see how many stones it took to put the street light out. It got real dark around there. So that kind of stuff wasn't terrible crimes, but it was bad enough, you know. Right. Somebody always called the cops. So he thought he'd like to get us out of there during the summers. My aunt was county nurse here in Itasca County in the 20s and 30s. So she built a little cabin out here on Pokegama Lake, which we still have. It's the same cabin, built in 1935. No plumbing in it, but it does have electricity now. And so my dad took us up here, and at that time, we didn't even have electricity. It was just kerosene lamps. But to a kid, it was ideal because, geez, we had this whole world to ourselves across the lakes. There wasn't one habitation of any kind. It was all wild. You could hear coyotes howling, and this was back in the 30s, of course. So we enjoyed, my brother and I, you know, we wore a pair of pants around all summer, barefoot and bare-chested, and had more fun. We had an old boat my dad had bought, and we'd row all over that lake and swim all over the thing. Well, then we'd go back to school, and especially as we get a little older, down at Edison High School, where I went, my brother and all of my sisters. But boy, when we got done up here at the end of the summer and have to go back to school at Northeast here, it was just like pulling the plug on all of your things that you're so fond of, and be back in this, have to hitchhike down Edison a couple of miles and all that to school every day, or else hike. But that's a pretty long walk to get to school every day. Didn't have school buses. So I thought, man, I'd love to be living up there. Well, then the war was on, and I joined the Navy. Well, got accepted into the Navy Air Corps. Went to school, several Navy Air Corps schools, one at Northfield, then went to Yankton, learned to fly planes, then went to Iowa City, Iowa, and then went down to Memphis, Tennessee. There's a little naval air station there called Millington, a little town, Millington Naval Air Station, flew bigger planes there, but then the Navy decided they had enough pilots, so they kind of got rid of a bunch of us there and sent me to a gunnery school, aerial gunnery, teach aerial gunnery. So I went down to Pensacola after I went to Great Lakes, Illinois, then to Pensacola, and then up to Quileute, Washington, and Whidbey Island, and that's where I was teaching and stuff at Quileute, little naval air station up right off on the Olympic Peninsula. Geez, that was a neat place. But the war came to an end, and I was put in a camp, demobilization camp, they called it, in Shoemaker, California, so I went down there to help get all these guys processed that were getting in and out of the Navy. Then I came back to Old Chamberlain and Minneapolis, did the same thing for a while, and then I finally got out. I thought, boy, I'm going to take forestry because I want to get back in those woods if I can. So I did take it, and of course that GI Bill was a godsend for kids that wanted to go. My dad would have been happy to send us anyhow, but we were living at home. It was nice to have that GI Bill. So I went through forestry school there and graduated last year. I was going, my wife and I had met in the meantime and were married, so we had a little apartment down on Franklin Avenue. That got to be a pretty tough place too. I think it still is. And because we had a poor old auntie that had married a Jewish guy from Moldova. You ever know where Moldova is?
I know where it is, yeah.
Okay, well, anyhow, I needed a nice guy, but he didn't have any kind of a job, and he just wasn't the employable type anyhow. He took issue with everything would come up if he had an employer, so that doesn't go over very well. Yeah. So she was living down by 7 Corners, I think they called it, on Cedar Avenue there. Geez, it was a tough place, and we were only a couple of blocks away from her, but we'd get down there. Oh man, they had these wild bars there, and upstairs they had brothels there, but then she had an apartment up there, and these guys would come knocking at her door and be bleeding and get beat up in a fight or something, so pretty tough part of town.
Yeah.
Anyhow, further made you feel like getting up in the woods where things were a little saner. So graduated and talk about a nice way to get a job. Went over to the DNR in St. Paul, saw the head man there, and those days they could smoke in their office, and I remember him sitting back in his easy chair, and feet up on a desk and smoking a cigarette. And said, "What do you want a job?" I said, "Yeah, I just graduated from forestry. I'd like to get a job." Well, he said, "We got 2 of them. One open at Big Falls, one at Effie. You want one of those?" I said, "Yeah, I'd like the one at Effie." Okay, he said, "Be up there next Monday or a week from Monday, and we'll send some papers up. You can sign them up there." And that was it. Talk about an easy way to get it. That was that easy. Just nothing to it, you know. And it was a good job. But then after...
So what was your official title?
I was a forester.
Forester, okay.
Forester for the state of Minnesota. We had a management unit that covered southern part of Coochin County and the northern part of Itasca. And we set up areas that, well, we just got an aerial photography had come in, so, Jesus, here, this is the first time anybody had ever seen a lot of this state land. The state owned, nobody ever seen it. How the heck can you see thousands of acres of land, you know, and when you go out there, you don't know where the heck you're at anyhow. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of these old corners, quarter corners, section corners for the landholders were put in back in the 1880s, 90s, 1905 or so. Well, then we had these aerial photos so we could begin to map out the kinds of timber that we had on all these different lands, and that was a neat job. And go out and visit and check it out to make sure that's what it was. So, and we went all over the state doing that, up south of War Road and west of Big Falls, right back in the Pine Island State Forest, and up in the Cabotogama Peninsula. And it was just the neatest job because you saw so much. We'd be out there for 2 weeks at a time, you know, and hold up someplace like a little place they call Blueberry Island up on Lake Cabotogama. A rainy lake it was. But then we go over onto the Capitola Peninsula by boat and walk back in. But we had these aerial photos, so it was great going. Well, 6 years after, but then we heard the word was out that the guys that had gone to school for forestry, they hoped to get them in the main office down in St. Paul, because a lot of guys were going to be retiring there, and I thought that's the last place I want to go. So there's openings in the county land. The county, like Itasca, had 400,000 acres of tax forfeited land, which had been declared tax forfeited under a law that had been passed in about 1941. They had all these lands, thousands and thousands of acres of land that timber companies had owned. They cut the timber on. Well, they thought, who's going to pay taxes on this dumb land? It might be 100 years before there's any timber, who knows? And obviously that was the thing for them to do. Don't pay the taxes. Let the state figure it out. Well, they sat there and finally the state passed this law that the land would be declared tax forfeited, and the county would administer the timber sales and that, the land sales, but a certain percent would go back to the state, a certain amount to the school district, a certain amount to the county for taking care of it. So that was a neat job there, and they formed a little land department then in the county, in each county in the courthouse. So that was a good job too. It was 400,000 acres, a lot of land, and I got about 3 guys to work on it. We were planting trees all over the place and putting in public accesses, and my boss was an old lumberjack. He'd grown up around Reed's Landing down on Lake Pepin. I think it's on Lake Pepin.
Yeah, at the southern end of it.
Yeah. And but then his dad had gotten a homestead up at Boy River up here. And so they moved up here, and he was a real great old logger. He was one tough old dude too. You know, he knew loggers and lumberjacks backwards and forward. But then, of course, he was older, and so when he retired, I got his job. And so then I was a land commissioner for 15, well, it must have been 20, almost 20 years. And retired at 58, which I was glad of, because it's fun to do other things, and there's a certain amount of political things that go on, you know, when you're in a small place, and you get pretty tired of that. You just ask any employee, the politics of any place gets to you after a while.
Right.
And some people are more beholden to the politics than others. I remember one commissioner telling me we were trying to do what was best for the county as far as sales of land. We didn't like to sell land way back in no man's land. Some guy moves in there, builds a shack, and has 8 kids, and he wants the county, the school system, to come and get his kids to school, and they have to build a road and all this and that. And the guy pays $50 a year taxes on his shack, you know, and it costs him $20,000 a year just to service the guy. So we wouldn't want to do it, but some of these guys, well, I remember this one commissioner saying, well, I want to get elected 4 years from now, so we're going to let this guy buy this place. And, of course, they had the power to say, but it didn't happen very often. But pretty hard to swallow, you know, because you could see for the public's good, it was just ridiculous. But that's the way life is full of that kind of stuff. You don't want to take it too seriously. Don't sleep at night.
Right.
Do what you can and forget the rest. But anyhow, it was a great job being land commissioner. We got a guy could go out and have all these outdoor projects. There were all kinds of planting trees, and I got acquainted with all the Indian people up around Inger and Ball Club, and got to know their families, and we'd hired those Indian kids, and felt sorry for the disorganization some of those poor guys had. Even a lot of Indian kids were living in the rapids then. They'd come to work in the spring sometimes. You know, spring is like around here. It's supposed to be spring, and then it snows a couple inches. Well, we've got thousands of trees to plant. We plant up to 1 million trees a year. And so we had to get these babies in the ground. We're planting with these planting bars. So if there's got a little snow on the ground, the ground was thawed, get out there, poke trees, I remember this one kid came to work. All he had was some Oxford shoes, and the only lunch he had was a half a loaf of bread that was left in the kitchen at home, and everybody had been drinking, so there was no preparation for him, and didn't have very good clothes, but nice kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to know them and know the old people, and they were fascinating because they know so much about Indian ways and Indian words, and I've been learning Indian words for years, and it's just fun, to be able to say a few words and kind of get an idea what they're talking about. And they have some beautiful things in their language, like one gal, let's see, well, this little old lady, her name was Howard, Rose Howard, but her Indian name, Rose Howard doesn't sound too impressive, but her Indian name was Waiwishi Gishigok, and that means a beautiful day. Well, that sounds a little more appealing, And,
yeah.
And then there's another gal, she's still living up there, Evelyn Bowstring, but her Indian name is Beshanakwaduk, and Beshanakwaduk means colored clouds in the evening sky at sundown. Well, gee, that's pretty,
Mm-hmm.
sounds good image. Good image, and a lot of little things.
Mm-hmm.
And they have an Indian naming system that if you, they'd always had the elders were treated with great respect. They like to have them make these weighty decisions for kids' names, so they'd invite 4 old people over when a baby was born, and they were going to give it a name. And they had, I remember there's a lot of rabbits. Did you ever hear of an Indian named Rabbit? That's up around here. There's some rabbits up there yet. But this old gal, of course, no teeth or anything, but she was Grandma Rabbit, they called her. Well, Grandma Rabbit was called over to give a name because they thought old people really had the inside track on things, in touch with the other world. And but Grandma, and the old Indian that gave me the name, was supposed to tell you what the dream was that they had as far as naming this child. They'd have dreams and they'd come up with some name. Well, this little gal that they were trying to name, Grandma Rabbit, couldn't think of anything. So what they did in that case, a lot of times old people's minds weren't that great. They just name it after the person. So this little Indian girl's one name was Old Lady Rabbit. Well, she wasn't too nuts about her name. She got stuck with that the rest of her life. So you took what you got, not what you wanted.
It's a risky game there, Ed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, choose your elders wisely. But they were treated with great respect, and it's a fun culture because there's just lots of that. And of course, the people feel a little bit put down, so they never tell you anything like that until you're sitting in their little abode up there at their table. And then they're the most fun people in the world. They always want to serve you coffee. And if they didn't, a lot of times they didn't have enough money for coffee, so they'd, I remember this old lady, Rose Howard, beautiful day, would say, well, I've got some tea. All I've got is swamp tea. That's a plant that grows. It's Labrador tea, we call it. It grows out in the swamp, got a little leaf, fuzzy leaf underneath. It's an evergreen leaf, too. It grows all winter long. It's a little snow there, but you can put, it makes pretty good tea. If you ever want to try some, we'll pick you a few leaves. You can just brew up a little cup. Okay. But anyhow, when you sit around a table drinking this swamp tea, you feel like you're getting into the culture pretty well. And then when they tell you about, don't say, talk about Nana Bajus, because he'll come and put frogs in your bed if he hears you talking about him. They named this lodge up the North Shore, Nana Bajus. but that's the kind of a great Indian spirit. But you don't talk about him out loud. And so if you do in the summer, in the winter it's okay because he's resting with the rest of the frogs, but in the summer he'll come and put frogs in your bed, and man, they believe that, so they just whisper that. So
you better check your bed tonight before...
Yes, well, I've checked before, but I've been spared.
So I haven't really done much to pursue this yet, but I'd like to at some point connect with some folks in the Native American communities up here.
Yeah.
How do you think I should get started?
Well, what I should do is take you along up there. I've got a few things to deliver. We used to take stuff up to this Evelyn Bolstry, and her mind is fading out of the picture a little bit, but if you care to, and of course it's always an iffy thing, because if they feel they're being examined while they jump in, they're all pretty busy too. I mean, most of the younger people are working. Mm-hmm. Kids are in school, but now the kids should be out of school, I think. And I could take you on a little run up to Inger, or bring some stuff up there and sit around and talk and see if we can get anybody around. It's hard to find somebody home, but I think like this old Rose Evelyn Bolstring, she has a daughter-in-law that kind of takes care of her, and I think she was there. I haven't seen her talk to him for several months, but I guess it's kind of that way. Mm-hmm. And maybe old Evelyn goes in for kind of a senior center at Deer River, I think, some days. Maybe she's going all the time now. But I could check into it a little if you felt like you wanted to take the time for that.
Sure. I should have time. I've got a couple more weeks here, and I think a lot of those days I'm going to be driving down to Aitken or Crosby, so I'll be on the road some days. But when I come back, I go to Michigan for a few days, then I'll come back and I'm going to be around Bemidji for a week or two. Mm-hmm. So those places are still accessible from there.
Yeah, and they're on the Hudson's Bay watershed, of course, up here. So you're out on the Mississippi River, but it's still kind of neat. The people I knew at the ball club have all pretty much died off. That's the trouble. You live a long time, and these guys all fake, and Indians die pretty young anyhow. They get diabetes easily and stuff. But good guys, just some kind of a genome there that's not favorable to dealing with liquor and all that kind of stuff. And but neat guys.
Well, I think Cass Lake has kind of a governmental.
Oh yeah, they do,
right?
Oh
I might give them a call also and see.
Yeah. And they've got some sharp people there. Even some of the people at Inger work at Cass Lake. So
all right.
You're right. There's one gal there, Missy Howard. She's, if you could get to see her, I think she works right in the headquarters there. I could find out. And if you could talk to her up there.
That'd be great.
Yeah, she's about your age, I think, so pretty sharp, and a lot of sharp people up there.
Cool.
Yeah.
That seemed like a good place to
start
up there.
Oh, it is. They got lots of records there, too. And they might have somebody that deals with the kind of thing you're interested in. And, of course,
I'd be really interested in getting an account of history more directly from them rather than from books that may have been written with a different agenda.
Yeah, well, it makes quite a difference, And if you can just get them to open up, it takes a while to gain their confidence, and I think you're good at that, though. I mean, they trust you, I know, because a lot of people somehow they want to start telling them how it should be, Just these people, if you want to find out something, just keep your ears open and your mouth shut, and let them do the talking, and kind of encourage them to keep talking, because if a person feels like everybody's going to call him chief, well, who wants to talk to a guy like that? They consider that kind of a put down, I mean, the old whitey, you better thinks, why should they feel bad? Some guys, they don't understand that sensitivity that people have.
Right, exactly. So let's go back to the forest for a little bit.
Okay.
One thing I was going to ask is to just take me through a little bit of how the forests have changed and where things are like, what things are like now. But could we start maybe first? Could you describe a little bit about what the forest would have looked like before logging really got underway?
Well, there's lots of pictures of these old logging camps that show the forest in the background and some beautiful timber there, and I had a nice old picture of a guy standing. Might still be in my room downstairs, should be. Anyway, there's a lot of these beautiful pine stands, and of course and it wasn't all pine, but that's what they take pictures of. That's what they're cutting. Mm-hmm. And a beautiful big pine logs, and I don't know if you ever had a chance to get up that Lost 40 up there, up by Dora Lake.
Not yet, but it's on my list.
Yeah, well, that's a long way from your subject to it's even on a different watershed, but
that's an old growth stand, right?
Yeah, it is.
Never logged.
Yeah.
So that would be one place you could really get a feel for what.
Well, you could, and you'd have to give a careful shot because there aren't many of these old trees left. They're 300-400 years old, but there are a few standing here and there, and there is something pretty awesome about getting up close to one, so you can make a judgment as just to how big this tree is. You can take a picture of a big tree from a little distance there. It doesn't look any bigger than anything else. It's all relative, but you get some guy standing there by it, then things look different.
Yeah.
But but the country was just apparently covered with beautiful pine, and they said in the old days when they were General Land Office survey, were putting in section corners and quarter corners. That was almost a must because otherwise it was anybody's ball game. Guys were coming down from Canada along the Big Fork River and cutting trees down with axes. They didn't even have saws in back in the 1880s. There were still a few old chopped off big stumps where they cut trees and they drop them in the river, drive them up to Rainy Lake and down Lake of the Woods in the Kenora there. But, of course, the government, how are you going to send some guy up to look at that? It takes him a week to get here. He doesn't know where he's at when he does get here. And there's this guy up there.
Get lost, I think.
Well, yeah, and then thousands and thousands of acres, and there's some guys cutting up here on the river well. So they finally decided they got to get this land all surveyed, which is a great thing. And then the government sold a lot to homesteaders, gave them the land on the conditions for a homestead. And, of course, a lot of them would just cut the timber on that. And the logging companies got a lot of it. They'd get some guy to homestead it, then they'd come and get the timber. And neither one of them would pay the taxes. And so a lot of that land, after it was cut, and then there big fires would come in often that would wipe off the stuff, all the slash that was left. But amazingly, the second growth of timber would come out. There'd be a lot of aspen, and that was a good second growth of timber. You notice when you're walking around outside now, you'll see these little fluff balls floating around out there. Well, you look at them, and each one will have a little tiny speck in the center. That's the aspen seed.
Oh.
It's amazing. It just shows you what a fantastic creation this is, because that's a wind-blown seed. Usually you get up and they hardly seem to have any weight, so the gravity to them, they get a little puff of wind and blow it for about miles. Mm-hmm. Well, you get a burnt-over area, that makes a perfect seed bed for a tree like an aspen. And all this fluff gets down there. Conditions are right, the moisture conditions, those things will seed in. Otherwise, you cut aspen now, of course, then it will sprout from all the roots out there, and the trees will come up all over the place. You have a big forest. 5 years later, you got a great big pile of trees, 5 feet high, 6 to 10 feet. But then these trees have a kind of a succession after the aspen gets about so big. Trees like white pine kind of come in underneath as an understory, and then they'll eventually take over, because the aspen will last 70, 80, 100 years. And conks out. These white pine will get 300, 400 years old if nothing bothers them much. And Norway pine or red pine, they're different. They have to have a open air. They grow much better being out in the open sun. But when a pine stand was cut, a lot of cones would be left, and they'd give off their seeds, dry up, and the seeds would drop off, and so they often would seed in. Some stands didn't seed well at all. Others did very well, depending on the water. If it was a real dry year, the things that couldn't hold on. But by and large, over time, these stands all came back to something.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, lowland trees were a lot like elm and ash. They had their own wind-blown seeds, but they're heavier seeds, so they didn't blow as far, but they seed themselves in quite well. And even these little pine have a little, their seeds have little wings on them, so usually when they're maturing, they open the cone, and this little seed will drop out in the wings, and if the wind's blowing, it'll blow them quite a ways, and they seed in. And then you got these jack pines. They have a nice cone that does not open easily. It is real tight unless it's heated. So when these fires come through, geez, that heat is just enough to open those cones, and the doggone things come and seed the place in. Be thick as hair on a dog, sometimes.
So was it mostly white pine that was the dominant form of pine then at that time?
I think, yeah, mostly white pine. It's a tree.
And a few stands of red pine.
Oh, yeah,
there.
quite a few stands of red pine, but on these lighter, sandier soils, red pine did very well because they like that type of soil. White pine likes a little heavier soil, and so and they can persist as they're shade tolerant, so they can grow underneath other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Takes the time getting up there, and eventually they break through into the, and then they're kings of all this array to get up there. And
so then once they've kind of taken over and are the tall trees, are there, what's growing underneath them in the understory then?
Not much. It might be a little hazel brush and other plants that are quite shade tolerant. Might be a few little other white pine coming up underneath, but they don't get very far. And of course, now deer, rabbits, they take quite a bunch of the reproduction that comes in from these pine. So, but it's pretty fascinating to see how nature can just heal a wound in the surface very rapidly with some kind of plant growth.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, in your job then, as for the county, you were replanting forests, or?
Well, yeah, we had lots of open places. It'd be old homesteads, farms, guys try to make a farm. It'd be a regular dang rock pile, and you'd see places where some of these guys had piled rocks up 6 to 8 feet high, just trying to get the fields clear, but just gave up because the soil wasn't that great. Just season is short, and because the soil is pretty light here, it's not deep. Like Iowa is such a difference, altogether different, as you know. And southern Minnesota, but you can get some crops up here. And
it seems like a tough place to be a farmer.
Oh yeah, but a lot of Finnish people came in because it looked so much like Finland, and they felt much more at home in this kind of place. And also, these were the lands that were left. The good farming lands were all gobbled up pretty much by the early immigrants, and the Finns. Geez, you get around the turn of the century, why there wasn't much left as far as these real good homestead lands, but a lot of the old cutover lands and stuff that guys would sell pretty cheap. Companies would sell cheap if you could find somebody who wanted them. Government would let guys homestead up there. There'd be a little timber on them. It wasn't all pine, so there'd be those stands that have certain amount have a lot of swamp on them. Some that have spruce swamps on it, but there'd be some highland too, of course. But the last guy there, you got mostly swamp because
that was the last land available.
Yeah, the last land that nobody else had wanted. I remember there's a land on Wawina. Wawina is a glacial map of Minnesota shows these glacial lakes, and there's Glacial Lake Agassiz. You're familiar with that?
Uh-huh.
Glacial Lake Aiken down south here. Aiken's pretty boggy. You get down by south of Hill City. And then there's Glacial Lake Upham, that's towards Duluth, when you get around Swan River and Wawina there and Floodwood. Well, let's put a guy down in Wawina because we knew that country pretty well since it was in Itasca County. And it'd be just, at that one time in 1910, they were putting ditches in, thinking if they just drained this land, it would be great farmland, all this peat. But it only drained back about 200 feet, and that's as far as effectively is just a heck of a waste of money. But this one guy had homesteaded 160 acres down there, and I think he had about 3 acres of high on it near this segment, but this bow was left. But when you go toward Duluth, you remember that big, they call it Dry Lake, just east of Wawina, about a mile and a half, there's this big body of water off the south side of the road, and there's a little dam structure there, and some old ditch banks going off of that. Well, this guy was on the southeast corner of that Dry Lake, so-called. It used to be full of wild rice. Well, then they kind of blocked it off when they were digging all the ditches. They kind of screwed it up, drained it, so they killed off all the wild rice, and it was quite dry. Well, now they blocked it off, so the water's back up. They thought it might return to the lake, but all the present vegetation that has come in just floated up as a mat, so it's just got this mat of vegetation all over. A lot of openings out there, but no rice in them. But this poor guy had this Coting, his name was Koting, and he had this little shack down there, and we walked back there in the winter once. You could walk right across this old frozen water body. And boy, did that look like a lonesome homestead, sitting out there, listening to the owls hoot at night. So.
It seems like there are a lot of places like that around here.
Oh, man.
If you wanted to be out by yourself,
you could be very much by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen on some properties like these small little shacks out in the middle of nowhere. Are those mostly hunting shacks, or?
Oh yeah, I think if they look like they've been maintained in New Hampshire, they're mostly hunting shacks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of what I figured.
Yeah. And some guy, if he wants it for a summer place, well, he'll have it kept up a lot more than that. But hunting shacks, we've got one up between Effie and Craig up there.
All right.
And they look like something a cat dragged in. It's just tar paper and stuff, but these are very adequate for deer hunting.
Right.
And when you step out at night, and that's pretty doggone remote country, 6 miles of woods over to number 6 here, and we're back into it a little ways. You step out at night, you can hear the timber wolves calling from a great distance, and then you'd be sitting out in the outhouse there, and Jesus, it wouldn't sound like he's in the next 40, boom. I tell you, there's something in your genes that still react to that call.
Still gives them chill, huh?
Yeah, the hair on your neck kind of stands up a little bit. It's just, I'm sure it's just an inborn. It's 3 billion spaces on your genetic material, I guess. Each series of they call those things chromosomes. Well, there must be one there for those wolf calls, because, man, I haven't heard anybody yet. When you hear it under the right circumstances, you don't need to have anybody tell you it sounds spooky. It knows how spooky.
So tell me a little bit then about how forests are being managed today. How do you try to find a balance between logging and conservation, and what are kind of the bigger picture issues here?
Well, I think what most, like the DNR and the U.S. Forest Service and the counties, have really a good forestry systems now. They try to determine what the total volumes of timber they have and what each timber type can stand for on an annual basis for logging. And so they do that for their own lands. Of course, they can't do it for everybody's. And there are a lot of acres of private land, just small private owners, which they try to corral a little bit under get somebody or get the guy to do it himself. But these bigger agencies have a lot of land. So they try to have the logging take place in a way that they won't overcut this annual increase that they anticipate from all those different lands, and they do a good job of it. There's, of course, demands for logs, demands for pulpwood,
Mm-hmm.
and now they're talking about getting chips to make fuel and that type of thing. Looks like a possibility for energy preservation. So these companies, and they do a pretty good job of it. Like our son Jim works forestry, he heads the forestry department at Brandon. They've got their woods all classified as to how much they can cut on their own lands and how much they need off of other lands. And they, and the state as a whole is actually, the timber's growing faster than it's being cut. And people don't think so because they'll go out to some stand that they've seen for years and all of a sudden it's gone. They get pretty uptight about it.
Mm-hmm.
But sooner or later you get a big windstorm or you get a tornado come through and knock a whole bunch of stuff down. Then that's terrible stuff to try to log. It's under great tension and the guys out there and busted off trees and just terrible trying to log that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So the time to log it is when it's maturing before it blows over or starts to die. Even a dying stand is miserable because they're dead trees and some falling over and some blowing over and anyhow, so the management is good, and it's fun being in forest management because to be right out there with them and measuring them and taking volumes, and
Mm-hmm.
guys love it.
So what kinds of trees are mainly being harvested? Is it a wide range?
Oh yeah, they're actually more so all the time. They're harvesting. The easiest trees, of course, were for the logs, were pines. Well then, there were a lot of country burnt over, so there's lots of aspen. And aspen was considered kind of a weed tree for a long time, but then they found it made pretty good pulp. And if you mix some spruce and balsam, it has a longer fiber in it. Spruce has a nice long wood fiber, so does balsam. Aspen's a little shorter. But if you want paper that doesn't tear easily, you want paper with long wood fiber in it. Newspaper, you can use aspen. This book paper you're writing on, that's a little better quality. You gotta have some spruce and balsam. But the company, like Brandon Paper, they can make the types of paper that are needed. So do all these other newsprint companies. Boise Cascade up there, I guess they just call it Boise now, up at International Falls. And they all have their special type papers.
Mm-hmm. So they're harvesting a lot of the aspen for paper.
And then they have other woods like, ash was made nice wood for paneling and that type of thing, but you can only have so much, like the building trades are really down now, so there's not much call for a lot of these woods. And of course people's tastes change, like all this wood we've got here, we cut off our own land. It's kind of knotty pine, but knotty pine was quite a thing when it first became thought of as a neat way to decorate your den or your basement and everything. Well, it's still okay, but they got a lot of other type of things now too, so it comes and goes. But then there's ash and elm, of course, took a real nosedive when the Dutch elm disease came in, so. And, but they do find maple, birch, oak. Gee, they make nice paneling, but a lot of it isn't that good for anything, so you harvest a bunch and it'll have defects, so it doesn't make good wood. So then you got a lot that you could make. Now, chips for fuel pellets, or just fuel wood. They've got this big plant, Minnesota Power over here at Blanham. Mm-hmm. Makes energy by burning all this sawdust and everything else, And So it's a constantly changing thing. And
right, finding ways to use somebody's resources more efficiently, I guess.
Right, and
like the iron ore mining too.
Yeah, right. Like magnetization, geez, they're back there getting this old leftover stuff from the tailing basin.
Right. So that's pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And as the demand gets higher, it makes the stuff worth more. If the stuff isn't, it's like aspen. When aspen was worth 50 cents a cord, the longest cord is 4 feet high, 4 feet wide, and 8 feet long. For 50 cents, nowadays it'd be a joke. Well, then the stuff got up to around $30. That's a little bit more like it.
Right. I guess we've come a long way from the early logging days. I remember reading that, and this was more about, I think, the logging over in Wisconsin, but I think I read that something like 40% of the trees they harvested were actually went to waste, basically.
Yeah, well, it makes you sick.
Yeah.
I see logs lying left out there. Maybe there'd be a hole down through the center, and they'd be 2.5 feet through. Guys would leave that, or a lot of them sunk in the river. They're driving them down there. These guys go out and dig dead ends out of St. Louis Bay out there. Thousands of board feet of old logs.
Still submerged over there?
Still submerged. Dig them up. Some poor old Chinese guy had harvested a bunch out of there. He thought, gee, this is pretty neat. He hauls them up on land here. One of these old companies came and said they claimed it because still had their stamp marks on it. Oh, jeez, what a jip.
Yeah.
Guy doing all the work and getting the stuff.
And then has it taken away.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. Seems like there ought to be some expiration on that.
Well, there should be, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you'd think so, but, I suppose the guy might have taken it to court, but that drags on forever, costs tons of money, might lose.
They have the company has a lot more legal resources than money to fight it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the forests up here too, I guess there's a mixture. There are obviously a lot of evergreens, but there are some deciduous trees.
Oh yeah.
There are a fair amount of maple and basswood.
Basswood, yeah. Basswood is another panel type tree, and not much for pulpwood, but you use it for chips. You know, it's a light tree. You get it, take the water out of it. It's pretty light wood. Cedar, you just make great poles, but they and you would saw it for make good paneling.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, paneling is kind of these guys can buy these 4x8 sheets of paneling and get some South American wood, you know, look pretty classy.
Right.
No use getting some old not infested piece of wood there. You might see a woodpecker coming out of the thing, you know, get really nervous.
So I guess maybe like maple has a different kind of soil it likes than
they like a little heavy. They like a little heavier soil, and they well, as you know, these glaciers came down carrying all this tons and tons of different ground up rock and material, and it kind of differentiated itself as it came along. There'd be some of these gravels that were pushed into big piles and terminal moraine and that, and those hardwoods seem to like that type of thing. They're well-drained soil and enough clay in them so that it holds the water fairly well. So but pretty hilly, so these maples, oaks, they grow quite well on that. A little heavier soils, aspen grows on sand, but it likes a little heavier soil better. And birch, balsam, spruce likes the swamp a little. They like the highland, but they don't compete as well. So spruce and tamarack are kind of relegated to the swamp, so you don't have that much competition. But did you ever happen to talk about tamarack? There's this company over here by Minnesota Power. Somebody was mentioning that to the other day. Makes products out of tamarack.
What was the name of that?
Well, I think it's Lorox, Lorox.
Oh, right.
And I think that they're nice people over there. At least they were the last time I met them. And it's on the road that goes out to the main power plant. They're right out of Cohasset. Rather indistinct. They don't seem to make much of an effort to make themselves known. I think they're Swiss-owned.
I need to check up on them too.
Yeah, I think you'd find that pretty interesting. They're close to the river.
Yeah.
Practically on it.
So I guess as your, well, I'm not very good at identifying different types of trees. I probably ought to have a field guide with me and just study a little bit. But I guess when I was on my hike Saturday out to the Joyce Estate through the Chippewa Forest there, I think that was mostly deciduous trees.
I think so. I think you'd find that, yep.
So that was probably some aspen?
Aspen, maple, and oak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, there'd be a few pines scattered. Of course, you could tell them right away.
Right.
But yeah, well, we've got a lot of trees right around in our yard here that give you a quick tour. But when you get out there, it seems like a whole different ballgame too.
Right.
Seeing a stand is different from seeing an individual.
I'm still trying to, find the right strategy for dealing with ticks and mosquitoes.
Oh yeah.
I tend not to stand in one spot and linger all that long.
Oh yeah. Well, I think they get a lot of bad press. They're no fun, but I don't think a guy, if you're waiting to die from that tick bite, you're going to be a pretty old gray-haired guy. Yeah, Jesus. But they do it, and it's annoying, and they itch, of course, and all that. But
right, it's more annoying than anything. It's certainly not life-threatening and anything.
No, I never thought so. I remember coming home once. I'd been out cruising all day, and of course, you had time to monkey around picking ticks off. Got home, and they migrate on your body looking for some place to dig in. Well, they hit your belt line. They can't crawl very well down in your undershirt when they hit that belt line, so they dig in. I think I had 38 ticks that were dug in right around my belt.
Wow.
line. But geez, all you got to do is pick them off. They don't make that much of an inroad in a few hours,
And they don't really leave much of a blister or a bump or anything behind it.
No, well, some people are more bump prone than that too. I had one I found the other day because my arm was starting to itch pretty much, and I thought it was some kind of little wart or something, but it's kind of itched. Well, then I was kind of scratching, then I got underneath and then pried them loose so that I could see there was a tick, because they're hanging on just by their teeth then, well, then of course you pull them off, you got to hide on them. Doesn't hurt anything, but it itches for several days afterwards. You must put something in your hide. But it gives you something to think about,
So I guess Lyme disease is becoming a little bit more of an issue.
Yeah, it is, and that's with this deer tick, which is a lot smaller tick.
I think I know how to identify those. Of all the ticks I picked off on Saturday, I think only one was a deer tick. They were mostly some other wood ticks.
Wood ticks, wood tick, dog ticks, you call them sometimes. And the wood ticks have two colorations. They had one with a little white area up near their head there, and the others have the little white streaks coming down their back, but they're bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty common. And you'd be sitting there in a restaurant and you see one crawling up your pants that has escaped your attention so far. He's looking for a good spot to dig in, but some guys really get upset with those dang things. You got to take, you think they got a bat or something they found. They said, all you got to do is go flip in the toilet, or of course we just flip them off. When you're outside, just heave them away. You're not going to get over to that fast. You spend all your time just getting rid of ticks if you monkey with them too much.
Right. Just got to go on and do your business, right?
Yeah.
So are there leeches in some of the lakes up here too?
Oh yeah. I think there are leeches and all.
Yeah.
And they're quite harmless,
Right.
I remember I was looking for logging camps. I used to dig around, even take the kids out on Saturdays. We'd dig around these old logging camps, find all kinds of old axe heads and horseshoes and ox shoes. Oxen came from real old camps back in the 1880s and 90s, mostly. But geez, I saw this camp right alongside of a lake back up north here, and back in the woods quite a ways, and nobody had any kind of development on it. It was all public land. So I thought, geez, I'm going to swim out into this water. It looked like where they'd been throwing the stuff, you might find something out in the water, because these little snuff jars and that are neat little things. They used to get women's stuff in a little jar, loggers, and I think 1 pound or 2 pounds of snooze in that thing. Well, I swam out into this thing, and I didn't have anything on, of course, except my diving, snorkeling stuff. Came back to shore, and I bet I had 500 little dang leeches. They were so small that they were transparent, but they'd all grabbed a hold, and they started to suck blood, so every one of them had a little red spot where the blood was going in. But they didn't have that much of a start, so you just get started, and they put some kind of a compound in your skin, so it's like Coumadin, keeps your blood from coagulating. Mm-hmm. Well, I'd scrape off these dang things like this, kind of heave them down, but every place where you scrape one off, the blood would start running. These guy looked like he's bleeding to death, you know. I got through scraping them, and I didn't find anything out there anyhow. It was any good from a logging camp, but man, it was a bunch of leeches in that thing.
Well, then your body adjusts eventually, right?
Oh yeah. This day didn't know anything about it.
I guess I was surprised because for some reason I always thought about leeches, associated them more with like tropical climates than with here.
Oh yeah, there's lots of leeches, and they got these great big black things swimming around in the lakes. You see them every once in a while. And they'll hang on if they get enough chance, but nobody's going to be caught red-handed with a dang leech that long on, you know.
So there are some that big up here.
Oh yeah. Oh, they look like little snakes. I know if you know, they stretch out, so if you kind of stretch one out, they'll be about this long, a big long black one, but they kind of tend to crunch up a little bit, so it'll be 5-6 inches long. And out of water, they're helpless, you know. And of course, you want to be mean, like, and make them squirm, sprinkle a little salt on them, like they really go into a paroxysm.
Yeah.
But I don't take any joy in that. That's one of the things about growing older. You tend to become sympathetic to all forms of life. Geez, I'm getting so bad as you doggone beetle in the house or something. I make sure I get him outside and give him his freedom. I don't want to flush him down the toilet. It seems kind of inhumane.
Right. They all have their purpose, right?
They do, and you know, and then when you look at them, they're such a marvelous creation. Geez, I was just looking at a spider the last couple of weeks in my room down there. He was in a windowsill, or in the window between the two windows. I thought he's probably there, but I couldn't reach up in there to get him. But he lived there for a couple of weeks. Well, then I noticed this morning he's up on the ceiling in my room there, and he's doing fine. He's getting bigger than he was. But it's just kind of interesting to look at that doggone little guy, and he hardly ever moves. But then later, if you look, you can see he's in a different place up there. But he keeps eating stuff. I don't know what the heck he gets. But it's kind of fun having him. And you're lying there and you watch clouds overhead, and when you're lying on your bed and you've got a window, and then you can gauge it at which way the cloud is moving. So you're looking, you see, geez, there's a slight movement. Otherwise, it looks like a stationary. But so nature's so full of these doggone things. That's the nice thing about getting older. You got time to sit there and watch that stuff. And when you're young, you don't think of it. You don't figure you have time to look at it. But geez, it's fun. It's fun to sit in the yard and just look at all the different things and listen to the different birds singing. And yeah, some poor guy is caught up in everyday life. And you hear that bird? What bird? Well, listen, that bird. You know what it is? No, don't have any idea. Well, kind of too bad to be so oblivious to your surroundings. They're beautiful.
Right.
You look at a doggone flower, you know, and even these lilacs, you look at one and you see here, each little bloom has a piston, pistil and stamens, and what a creation that's capable and have seeds all over the doggone place, and like these little aspen seeds. To think that each little aspen seed has that genome for creating a whole new tree. It could be 24 inches across in the butt and 80 feet high. But here, this little thing, you can hardly see it. And each cell, living cell in that thing has the genome or the chromosomes to divide and multiply itself, and then to multiply itself and also differentiate into a root, into
a leaf,
bark and a leaf.
Right.
And the next flowering, man, you can sit there and have a great time entertaining yourself just looking at this creation, and it's just fascinating.
So I guess that's what I saw when I was hiking around. There was an area that had a carpet of the white fluffy stuff, and so those were aspen seeds.
Yeah.
Doesn't the cottonwood do that too?
Oh yeah.
So
Cottonwood
that's
does too.
what I associated that with.
Yeah,
But
cottonwood does aspen. Yeah. They have balsam poplar, they call it. You guys call it balm of Gilead, but actually balm of Gilead is a slightly different species. Grows out east. This is really balsam poplar. That's just by general acceptance, you know. But anyhow, and that also has fluff that blows around the leaves. So they're all in the populus genus, and they're different species.
Well, you mentioned the Lost 40. I know I need to get there. Are there, you probably know Itasca County the best, but probably a lot of other places besides there. If I wanted to go places to kind of get an experience of the variety of forest or the forest life, where are there a couple places you think I really need to visit?
Well, now do you want to have it closely associated to the Mississippi River or just back?
Doesn't have to.
Yeah, well, in general, you know, you have to look carefully to see the differentiation, because it's one form of forest melds into another, and the average person just doesn't have time to watch this, but as you go from one to the other. But I think a good place to go, like Sugar Hills down here. Have you been down there yet?
I haven't been down there yet.
That's a real beautiful deciduous area. And that's a glacial moraine where the glacier was pushing a lot of rocks and stuff, and it piled up as a glacier moved forward carrying its load of rocks. It would begin to melt at a certain place, and so it would deposit its load there, but it kept coming this way and bringing, so it would build up these deposits. And geez, it's a beautiful area to see.
Sugar Hills?
Sugar Hills, you can go down to 169 and Highway 17, which goes off to the east. It goes around the south end of Pokegama. And it's just a nice sight anyhow. As you're going east, you'll see these Sugar Hills. They look like a little overlying mountain range if you aren't too fussy about how big a mountain has to be. But it does. It stands up there with these hills covered with hardwoods. And then as you get over past Pokegama Lake, the south part, you cross a little bridge and there's a creek goes in Little Pokegama Lake. But you're going on 17, and as it turns and goes north towards Cohasset, there's a road goes over to the original Sugar Hills where they had there's some apartments and that, but you'll be right up in the Sugar Hills, and you could go over there and then north along the east side of Sugar Lake.
All right.
Have you been to Sugar Lake yet?
I haven't. Mm-hmm. So does the name come from a preponderance of maple trees, or?
Yeah. Well, the Indians call it Sisabakawet. That means Sisabakawet's the name for sugar that comes from maple. All right. They used to harvest that stuff, and there were a lot of maples around there. And the lake used to be Sisabakawet, but people, they kind of get a headache thinking about it, so they call it sugar. It means the same thing, but sugar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that sounds like a good area.
Yeah, it is. It's a nice area. I think you'd be impressed with it.
Is some of that public lands over there too, or is it just kind of driving around?
Oh yeah, it's pretty much, it used to be all tax forfeit land. We sold it to the Brandon Paper Company once because they needed land so that they could justify the financing that they were getting, that they'd have enough land to cut some timber on in case everything went to pot.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't be stuck out there fighting with everybody else to get a few cords.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, being a home-grown outfit, we very much wanted them to be safe. And then the Sugar Hill thing, this guy was going to have this big ski area. Well, that never, like most ski areas, the season is short, and then if it doesn't snow, you're stuck, you know. And not everybody's bagging. A lot of people, they like to talk about it, but they stop at the bar out at the ski resort and never get any farther than that.
Never get beyond the bar.
No, got their skis out there on top of the car. They look like skiers, but that takes them doing a certain amount of skill. You know, a lot of guys, you get going 50 miles an hour down a slope there. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's going to be ending up over here in Grand Itasca.
Right. That's probably where I end up. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, the guy wants to start slow on that stuff.
All right, so Sugar Hill.
Sugar Hill, well, I'm trying to think of another interesting area. If you go down to just a lot of pine, and you might get tired of just solid pine, but if you go down to Blackberry, about 7 miles down the highway toward Duluth, there's a road goes south there. It's just past, there's a little corner store there and town hall and stuff right at Blackberry. You go about half a mile on further, and there's a county road that goes due south there. And you go down there a couple of miles. I should get you a map.
Well, I have a county map you gave me. A copy of that.
Yeah.
I kind of know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well,
on there a little bit.
Yeah, well, and this is pretty solid pine, Norway pine primarily, but
okay, so it's County 72?
Correct, County 72. So you get past a few old potato farmers and stuff, and you get down here, and pretty soon you're in a lot of tax forfeit land here. And it's pine all over, and you go up this way, a quarter of a mile down this way. Now, we just put up a little sign in honor of a guy that was a great wildlife manager, Milt Stenman. And you look in here about 50 feet, you'll see his sign, new sign there. But there's a trail goes along way down here, and there's just pine all over, and you'll just be surrounded by pine.
All right, I got very close to there. There's a boat ramp here.
Yeah, correct. That's a little public access.
Yeah, just kind of exploring how to get close to the Mississippi and stopped at that boat ramp.
Mm-hmm.
I guess those stars are probably public access points.
Yeah, I think that's what it's supposed to be. I know. Yeah, I'm sure it's public access, but I can't imagine how the heck. Well, I guess this is a public access of sorts, but it's not really. I wouldn't want to have to try to get in there. The road is shot half the time.
Yeah, that's been a learning experience too.
Oh.
Taking my car in places I'm probably going to have to rethink at times.
Yeah, I don't blame it.
For my car.
Yeah, I don't blame it, boy.
Especially after a rain.
Oh, gee, I'll say, and getting a clay country, man, that is tough going.
Yeah.
But this is all sand country. That's why the pine likes it so much. The very
right.
pine sugars is kind of an outwash plain from the river, apparently, back in the days of the glaciers, places there's this terminal rain where it piled up. Well, then where the water was washing out, it'll separate out into gravels and sands and fine sands, and this is all pretty fine sand all through here.
So do you have any favorite spots along the Mississippi?
Well, I have to think about that a little bit. They all look good to me, but well, the Mississippi from here on is pretty much solid bank, and there's a few oxbows along here. You get down along here, as you can see, this looks like a gut or something here. It goes across, and but it's not what I'd call particularly interesting, because it's just this hard bank, and then and should be a bunch of deer flies by this time. It's tend to hang around that water. But yeah, I think well, you saw this little dock going down there, and that's about right. Says it all.
Right. That's pretty much what's like through there.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the way through. You don't have a boat or anything.
No, I don't.
No. Well, it's just as well. And then when you get upstream, yeah, the Mississippi's pretty darn interesting. Have you ever been to White Oak Point yet?
No, I haven't.
That's an interesting spot. That's an old Indian site. Man, we found tons of stuff. This is White Oak Lake, and here's White Oak Point out about in here. This is the only high land. Yeah, take this little road here, and there's a little trail. The road goes up here, up some guy's field along here. And you can remember this on your other map there, but like there's quite a field here, and it's the only high land along the river till you get down to about to here, and till you get up to here. This is all big meadows and bulrushes and rice, and you just can't get to the river very easily there, except when you get to this high land here. This is a great place for Indians to easily get. We were camping here for centuries, and we've got pieces of copper from there that were 4,000 to 7,000 years old, as established by the state archaeologist, being associated with carbon chunks. He unearthed a big burial mound here back in the 40s. And but that's a pretty fascinating place just to drive right up on this guy's place. It's a field. You got a couple of trailer houses back here. People like to camp along the river because you got direct access to the river. But you can find Indian pottery fragments made by the Dakota Indians. Are you familiar with that stuff? And yeah, they're lying in the field here. I suppose his crop is coming up, whatever he planted, but you can still look along the edge of the road and see into the stuff. I'm sure you'd find a couple of chunks.
All right, so
here's a hunk of pottery. This is just from the Missouri River, but part of it all. We were over there.
Over in South Dakota.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bigger chip. You don't find that size chip anymore,
right?
Because the plow's been over so many times. But
all right, so that's mostly private property, but I can drive around there and walk.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't let that stop me. Mostly private, but not built up. There's no dwellings or anything along here, and it's also county and Indian land here in places. So when you're driving up along here, there's a guy lives in here, but there's a couple of guys along here. But when you get over here by the river, you can tell right away because it's quite a sight. You look out over this vast meadow, and then you drive up to this field where this old Indian site, White Oak Point, been some nice write-ups on that. There's a gal down at the bookstore, Village Bookstore. She's writing a book on White Oak Point.
Oh. Someone who works at the bookstore?
Yeah, yeah.
Is she, what's her name?
Well,
Does she work at the library too?
she may. You may have met her. She's a nice gal, and she was kind of a, back in the days of the hippies, she kind of like that. And she's got kind of a, might be O'Brien or something like that, but I can't remember her name.
I'll have to
Got kind of long hair and glasses.
All right.
Looks like about 40, 50 years old or something.
I may have to talk to her a little bit about it
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah, you should, because she knows a lot about it.
All right, so this way's north. So other thing I've been trying to do is find some really good places to get pictures along the river at different times of day, and it looks like this place probably I'm going to want to go in the morning.
Probably wouldn't be, because then you've got the sun.
Right, the sun will be behind me.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And then, of course, you're up here, you're on high land again. This little White Oak Lake, geez, there's a guy on his point. There were all kinds of copper implements. He had a whole border for him. Of course, the old farmer that lived there, he found him when he was plowing on there. It made me sick because he attached them to a board by boring holes through these wires. The last thing you want to do to an artifact is to shine it all up and scrape it and paint it or something,
No kidding. I've been over here. There's a hot bridge here over the river. I took some pictures there.
Okay.
I didn't go down that road.
And then this state park down here. We've been there.
Yeah, Schoolcraft State Park.
Schoolcraft, yeah. And it's kind of an accessory to the river, but you come down in a Zempel here, and there's a nice public landing down here. I guess this must be what they call it, this one. But anyhow, you drive out here, and geez, you see this vast meadows. You can see White Oak Point over here, just some trees that stick out into the meadows. But this is just a huge expanse of marsh type things, and there's a jillion ducks and geese and stuff in there, and they aren't flying around much because they're all nesting, but it's also some old railroad grade that went up to Effie and Craig, came all the way down here, and they dumped their logs in the river, or lake out here, I guess in the river, anyhow, to drive them down to sawmills and put in the place. They had a couple of big mills right around Zempel here. Zempel separated from Deer River because the guys that owned the mills didn't want to be under Deer River government things, right? So they made their own little town, elected their own government.
A company town, huh?
Company town, boy, she was too. But now there's a bunch of little houses there. Not a bunch, but some. Quite a few Indian people living on the south side of Deer River here too, and that's interesting because see, DeVaults and Nasons, those are all good Indian names.
What I was going to say. Is there a lot of wild rice here too then in that? Or?
Well, I think it's back around the edges out here, but you can't get to it.
You need a boat again.
Yeah. But you can, I think there might probably even some wild rice right around the edge here. Around, but not a lot. There's a lot more rice, of course, right along the river as you get down towards Grand Rapids here. Let's see. Boy, I said, yeah, you get here, you can look right off the lake here and see rice all over the place. Should be just coming up now, I would think, with the flat leaves on the surface.
All right. The river's kind of high right now, too.
Yes, it is. Yeah, very high. It's amazing.
Probably a little late in the season for it to be this high, I guess.
Oh, yeah, very high.
Now.
Yeah. I just find it unbelievable that it can be that high for this late, and it didn't seem like it rained that much, but it must have been quite a snowpack. And And of course, you see below the dam, they've got letting go a lot of water, and it's really raising hob downstream. But Aiken was getting pretty wet down there, I guess.
Yeah, I found the diversion channel down there, and it looked like it had a fair amount of water in it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clever mechanism they have down there, too. As I was telling you, I went for a hike at this place. It's called Bass Brook Wildlife Management Area, I think.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know what it is.
I can find my... Here's 76. Oh, it's pretty much like right here, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's right across from the Pokegama Dam.
Oh, yeah.
On the other side of the river.
I know where that comes out on the road here.
Yeah. And then at one end, kind of at the western end of it, there's a softball field, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's the Portage Park.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
So it's adjacent to that.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that's really cool there is there's a section near the railroad bridge that's got a high bank of...
Pokegama quartzite.
Yes, exactly. And it's
red.
So beautiful color.
Yeah.
I was there around dusk when I was hiking, so it made some really nice pictures.
Yeah.
But
a little outcropping of Pokegama quartzite, and darn little around. I don't know of any other outcropping like that, but you get north of town here, we've got on 61, this is a lot of outcropping here of the original old Minnesota range of mountains. This is just the roots down here, but a lot of rock outcropping.
Well, this has nothing to do with forest or anything, but I was driving up here the other day, too, on, I think it was on 60. Is that Town Line Road also? What it's called?
Well, let's see.
There's a gun club up here, and I think it was 60. But there was also an abandoned mine. You familiar with that area?
Maybe it's 61 you're talking about.
Maybe it was 61. Yeah, it had to be 61.
Yeah, because this is a town line here.
All right.
Yeah, and this is some old, well, you turn all there's an old tailings basin right here. Bunch of jack pine growing up and have been planted. But
all right.
Yeah, and you turn out 61, and that's where this rock outcropping is too, right here. You walk right up there and see this surface of this old ancient rock, and then of course you keep going here, and your gun club's over here someplace, I think.
And then I guess there's ski jump in that area too.
Yeah, ski jumps over toward Coleraine here. Might be it's right in here. It's funny.
I have one of the things that I like to do that's not related at all to researching the Mississippi, but I like to take pictures of abandoned houses and industrial sites and all that. Do you know who might own that property? If I was going to try to contact somebody to see if I could get permission to go there, or
which property is that?
The old mine there along 61.
I don't. Let's see. I think that was the old Lynn Greenway mine, and they. Well, of course, right out of the river is they got that little power plant. They used to have a hydropower plant there. And then back this way, west of the power plant, they got this old mine. I think Arbo Township owns it now. A lot of that stuff. Heck, I think I just go and make myself at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just do that then.
Oh, yeah. Tell them I told you it'd be okay, then they can come and see me and we'll talk.
All right.
Yeah.
It'd be handy to drop your name.
Well, they can't do anything to me. Get this old. Even if they execute your guys going anyhow, so it makes a difference. Yeah. I don't think anybody bothered there. They got a fence with a padlock on it, of course. They don't want to cut the lock off.
No, but it looked like there was a place that was pretty easy to get.
Why, heavens, yes. I just make myself at home. Everybody else does, I'm sure.
All right. Well, good. I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, do it. And as I say, you can always weed a lot of it by telling them, this guy told you, because you talking to him. And it throws them off. I mean, nobody even wants to take enough time. And I know nobody will question you about it, but
all right.
Sure, take all the pictures you want. And let's see that. Just trying to think what they've got for. You got a little parking area here.
I think there was a little parking area too down here.
Yeah, there is, right by the
There was a trailhead around there, so I could easy enough to leave the car there and then walk down.
Sure. Yeah, that little power dam's here, and then there's a place up here on top. There's a dam right up in here. Some poor guy he thought he was a good scuba diver, so Brandon Paper Company had a big culvert underneath there that they could release water into the river. But they had to open this valve, and they had this big opening down there, and just inside the, how was that? Must have been a lakeside. Anyhow, this kid was going to swim up this culvert into locate because they had a terrible time engaging that screw into the valve from up on the top of the ground. He said, heck, I'll take my scuba outfit and go up there and jam it in. Well, he gets back up in there, and it's pitch dark, and it's opens up into a big room type of thing, and he got kind of confused in there apparently because he couldn't find his way out, and he died back there. And of course they sent a professional guy up there, and he said, geez, you come back and you see this guy, they kind of hang in the water with their arms and legs hanging down. Pretty gruesome sight.
I bet.
Right down there on Gulf Shores Road. Well, that was the end of his career. But yeah, there should be a lot of interesting sites of old mining. And let's see, there's another pretty good site up. Well, even this road that goes up around here, there's quite a bit of old mining area. Yeah, you get out of the mine, but there's, right up in here, there's an old guy from Bovey. He built several concrete edifices out back here at one time, and he bought a carload of cement way back in the 1910 or 20s or something, and built everything out of cement. And Jesus, the walls are all 2 feet thick, and he backed by a lot of cement.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very good. This is a tangent too, but have you ever been up to the part of Minnesota they call the Northwest Angle?
Oh yeah, I've been on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about taking a day especially when I get over to Bemidji and it's not quite as far to get up there. Maybe going up there and spending a night.
She's a long way, and but they do have a road there now, which is neat. They never had one when I was there. They had to take a boat out of War Road and go up to Angle Inlet and Panassy, I think they call it one place. Yeah, it was pretty interesting, and I was up there when their M&O was logging up there. Geez, they had beautiful big spruce bogs that put your recorder to sleep here, but they had the...
Oh, we're so good.
Yeah, I thought maybe that paper was keeping the thing from transforming. Anyhow, beautiful big spruce, and of course clear cutter, but I'm sure by this time there's a whole new crop coming up, so better than letting it sit up there until a big windstorm comes by and accidentally knocks it all down.
Right.
Right, you sit, nobody's going up after that junk. Yeah, that's an interesting place, and especially those little places up there. There's old Fort St. Charles, I think they call it. You remember reading about that?
Yeah.
Some guys up there, and guys used to look around and find an occasional artifact. I suppose you get booted out of there now, and maybe you don't even have a way to get there.
Yeah, it's probably under somebody's authority now.
Oh, yeah. Geez,
Seems like the kind of place, though, where there aren't many people monitoring those things.
No.
It's too remote.
No, too remote is right. Nobody. And, of course, we had a metal detector, so it was always fun looking for stuff. And you get more doggone stuff, and it's just fun, but after you get a couple of tons of it, boy, you don't need it.
Then you just leave it for your grandkid to clean out.
Yeah, well, we gave the kids, I had lots of old Indian artifacts here, but I just shelled them all out to the kids, and they like that stuff, and so you're so darn glad you do it. You don't want to wait till the last minute and have some professional cleaner come and hear it all in a dumpster out here, you know, because that stuff's got, just to show you some interesting, I think, get this, as long as I got here, you can go get that plastic bag there and bring it over here. Just as a indication of you never know it all. I was up on this real remote area on Round Lake up by Squaw Lake looking for old Indian artifacts, and there's a lot more of this crap along with it, but you can get the general picture of these things all together here. Now that kind of baffles the imagination for a while because it was all washed up into this sand and the bulrushes, and every so often they'd have these little things at the intersection, and they got some of them on this one still about it, and it gets all mixed up because it's hard to keep track, but you can see that they got in here. Well, as you can see, this is a coin, and this is some stuff that's kind of squeezy. You can kind of squeeze that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I was asking few people, but I figured it had some Indian connection. So nobody knew what the heck this stuff was. And obviously it's quite new. So I asked my old Indian friend at Inger. Oh yeah, she said, that's a prayer chain. There's some guy that's really sick, and he makes these things up. It's a prayer chain for himself. And then he puts a little quarter in each one, and then a little bunch of tobacco in the other one. And then he makes and paints all these things up, and then he takes it out in the middle of the lake and heaves the whole thing over and out and just lets nature take it over. Well, it turned out that I happened to come by, so nature took it over. Human nature. Anyhow, but it just shows that life has lots of surprises, you know. So as I say, I asked a lot of these old honkies around here, and of course nobody had the slightest idea what the heck it was. Couldn't care less, I suppose. But I was sure darn interested to hear. So there's lots of different ways of looking at things that are, but it's always good to be open to possibilities. What the heck is this stuff, you know? And that's another fun thing. I'm glad you have the opportunity to get around and do some looking, because you only live once, and boy, there's lots of stuff to look at.
Absolutely. I'm never bored. How about that?
Good. Well, I'm glad you are, and that's just what the Lord wants is to give you an inquiring mind. Now, don't sit there and watch TV all day and some of those stupid ads.
Right. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time already. Well, maybe you got maybe 5 minutes to show me a couple trees outside.
Absolutely.
To identify.